South Africa's economic growth accelerated to 3.2% in the fourth quarter of 2011 on a seasonally adjusted and annualized basis. On an unadjusted year-on-year basis, economic growth was at 2.9% from a revised 3% in the third quarter. Joining us in studio for an analysis of the numbers is Lumkile Mondi, Chief Economist at the IDC. A very warm welcome to you.
Good afternoon.
Well, let's just talk about those numbers. Some economists saying that they came in a little bit stronger than they had thought. Your take on that?
Well, the consensus was a far lower number. However, I thought we'll get a far better number as well, because we believe that in the last quarter, there's a lot of good news that had come true, and but disappointingly, we came out with 3.2 for the quarter, which going forward raises a lot of challenges, because we're not so sure whether we can sustain that growth level, given the challenges that are facing the Southern economy and the rest of the world. So it's going to be challenging for us to really have a momentum that we can carry through to the next year and the following year, unless of course we see some of the capex that start rolling in, so that we can start seeing some activity, particularly in the construction sector, which is critical for employment absorption. But more importantly, also the mining project coming back as Transnet comes in with a much tighter plan, particularly to exploit the resources in the Waterberg, which are critical for us to change the Limpopo province to a better province with rising incomes going forward.
Well, let's just talk a little bit about the challenges here in South Africa. You were talking about global challenges, but some of the challenges we're seeing here, when we talk about company results, particularly in the resources sector, we are seeing those stoppages, those strikes are hampering growth and are hampering earnings in that sector. When it comes to just doing business this year and some of the things that we are still seeing going forward, Implots still in trouble when it comes to the rehiring process that they're going through now. What do you expect this number is going to look like in the year?
Well, I mean, if you look at the mining sector, I think this year is going to have lots of challenges, particularly given the fact that the logistic continues to be constrained, as we all know. And it's going to take quite a while for Transnet to roll in all the infrastructure that's required and provide locomotives. We've seen that Transnet has issued a tender inviting companies to bid on the rolling stock, which is very critical, particularly locomotives, very critical to pull a lot of the bulk commodities. So that's a process. I think this year will be very, very tough. I'm looking forward to the agricultural sector really pushing growth going forward, because the rains have been quite good, particularly in the past 2 months, and therefore if our output, particularly of maize, can improve, it will make a huge difference in terms of maintaining the food prices. But the rand has been doing very well in making sure that, you know, whatever happens, we can at least have a lower imported inflation than we'd expected when the rand was below 8 rand.
Do we talk a lot about agriculture? Well, as much as we should in South Africa. You're mentioning it now, but we don't.
It's an emotive issue. Agriculture is an emotive issue, because intertwined with the land. We know that the land issue creates a lot of uncertainty for a lot of farmers, particularly on produce. So a lot of them aren't using because they're facing either land restitution, or secondly, the government is just uncertain with all the land discussions taking place. We saw last week with Mr. Mulder raising an issue around land and the response by the president. So that's going to continue undermining our potential. But more importantly, we need to locate also our agriculture within SADC, because I think that's where we'll be able to resolve food security, is by working together as a region than look at a South African solution. But also the labor absorptive capability of the agricultural sector is enormous, and South Africa then can play a role on the value chain downstream, making food that's easily available, that's tinned, really adding value to the fresh produce that could be coming from Zimbabwe, Malawi, and Zambia, as well as Mozambique, which have got rich soil and the weather is very good throughout the year.
Another emotive issue in South Africa happens to be, you know, the gap between the people that have, the people that don't, and even people that do have jobs. There's that gap between the lower end of the spectrum to the higher end of the spectrum, and then we see strikes coming into the fore, and it does become a very emotive issue. Next week already we do have the issue of COSATU saying that it's going to take to the streets, and its subsidiaries, you know, already coming out and saying that it will support COSATU. When we do have things like that, when it comes to issues that are of an emotive nature and how it impacts the economy, what would you say to that?
Well, our constitution guarantees workers' rights, and in that sense, we expect companies to respect the right of workers to strike. The challenge here is that the unions have taken a different stance, particularly if you look at the COSATU unions, which a lot of the members see them as very much aligned to the ANC. In the process, workers see how some of the ANC people have done well, and they see how at the factory floor, nothing has changed at all. And there's a disjuncture. In the implants case, for example, we know that people were disgruntled with National Union of Mine Workers and ended up being leaderless and embarking on the strike that we've seen.
And now we did see that AMCU, that new union coming forward, and they did also, they were part of that Lodman situation that we saw last year. And isn't this an issue though? Because one of the things that MCU was saying was that it sees NUM, for instance, being too political and being too close to management. So then you do have this fight that seems to be happening even between unions. Going forward, what is this going to mean for business?
Well, what it means for business basically is that the business must recognize that they can't recognize 1 million. They need to make sure that they take care of the interest of everyone. That is because many businesses have got a quota that we can only recognize you if you are 50+1% of the grade of workers in that particular class. So we need them to recognize the minorities, because through collective bargaining, it's easy to negotiate, it's easy to quell strikes, it's easy to be transparent. But once you use a 50%+1, you're going to have wildcat strike, you're going to have productivity being hampered, and more importantly, you're going to have the state not being able to use its force if there's illegal strike, but secondly, the company not also being able to produce because there's no one at work. So it's really an issue that we saw in the 70s when unions are not being recognized, leading to the formation of COSATU in the mid-80s.
I want to talk a little bit about job creation. That is very crucial for South Africa. We saw it again taking a lot of attention when it came to the budget speech. And one of the things the minister said last week was the discussion papers on proposing youth employment incentive last year is under discussion. And the concern there is that there doesn't seem to be urgency. And the minister is saying we would like to see greater urgency in resolving this matter. What is happening when there is such an issue with jobs in South Africa? Where is the disconnect?
Well, we want a wage subsidy. I think business want a wage subsidy because that's easy to administer for business, but it's easy as well for us to hire workers that are unemployed at the moment. Any other means just becomes very, very difficult. COSATU, as well as FEDUSA, all the union federations have been very opposed to wage subsidy. That is why I was very excited to hear the Minister of Finance saying, you know what, we mustn't talk as business, as labor, as government. Let's talk as South Africans. Let's have a conversation that recognizes our challenge of poverty, unemployment, and marginalization. That not only one sector can defend its or protect its interest, but let's all of us take some pain to advance the interest of everyone. So I hope that discussion will come through. But that discussion will need stronger leadership from President Zuma, the Minister of Finance, and everyone else, including the union leadership, to take its workers towards a vision and a veil that recognizes that South Africa has got child unemployment. To address that, we have to compromise and make sure that we introduce a wage subsidy, which will be very attractive for business to employ. And then they can put pressure on us, why aren't we employing when there's a wage subsidy?